It's day 4 of the preliminary exam in Lenawee County, Michigan, to determine whether John Skelton will go on trial for the alleged murders of his 3 sons in 2010. I'm Melissa Andrews, a crime and investigative anchor and reporter covering this case. Now, the headline, I think, today is that there is no physical evidence, according to an investigator that was on the stand in this case. This came during the testimony of Michigan State Police Detective Sgt. Michael Peterson. We're really talking here about what the case does have and what it doesn't have. Peterson said he began working on the investigation about a year to a year and a half ago. The defense asked him, "Are there any bodies?" He said no. And then they asked, "Is there any physical evidence?" And he said no. When Peterson was asked what new evidence the investigators have, the prosecution objected. Peterson ultimately pointed to the inconsistent statements made by John Skelton, and those inconsistencies were a major part of his testimony today, including an interview that happened with Skelton at Bellamy Creek Prison in November of 2025. Skelton again told him that he gave his 3 sons to people connected to what he called underground sanctuary. He said 2 people named Joanne and Virgil left with the boys around midnight going into November 26, 2010. Skelton told Peterson, "They left and I burnt everything." He said he wanted to kill himself and did not want Tanya to find the children, but he also told Peterson that he regretted giving the boys away almost immediately. So Peterson said, well, then I asked him, instead of going and killing yourself, why didn't you go try to get the kids? Well, Skelton claimed that he did drive to Holiday City around 6 or 6:30 in the morning looking for Joanne and Virgil at a diner where they said they would be staying in a truck, but they weren't there. Peterson later testified that the statement conflicts with an earlier account in which Skelton said he never left his home. The defense also challenged Peterson over his experience, bringing up the D. Warner homicide investigation. Peterson had worked on that case as well, but the defense pointed out that investigators did eventually find D. Warner's body, and this, to this date, is a no-body case. The line of questioning really kind of led to a tense moment in court, with the judge eventually taking the attorneys into her chambers and criticizing the defense attorney, calling him incredulous. So this remains kind of the central fight in the case, the prosecution building its case with Skelton's statements, inconsistencies, cell phone records, and testimony about his behavior. One of the other things that Detective Sergeant Peterson was doing was looking at John Skelton's computer and his Yahoo chats. And I just wanted to bring up one of the chats. It happened on November 18th of 2010 in the afternoon. And he is talking to someone and says, "It feels like Tanya is just stringing me along. She doesn't like me anymore. It's gone from bad to worse. It will all end this weekend, though." And the person says, "Well, what's this weekend?" And he says, "I'm giving up. And she wants to be alone, then she will be alone. I'm on the path to hurting her so much anyway, might as well complete the job. I am so empty without her. I resented her a lot for not helping me provide for the family, but my time in Florida helped me." And then he proceeds to he says, "My will is gone. I am empty, made preps for things to be done. Tomorrow is my last day of pain." That would have been the 19th, but the alleged suicide attempt was not until the 26th, and the boys disappeared on the 26th. So for him to say, "Tomorrow is my last day of pain," that would have been several days prior to when the boys disappeared and that alleged suicide attempt. Still on day 4 in the John Skelton preliminary exam, in which a judge will decide whether John Skelton will go to trial for the alleged murders of his 3 sons in 2010. And in this video, I want to talk about some of the digital evidence, that being some of the messages, the cell phone movement, and custody history. John is having some sort of chat, and this is coming out in his Yahoo conversations that police have now accessed on his computer. This is a forensic examination of that computer, and these messages were between Skelton and some name that he had and someone identified as Kat. Police said that they don't know who Kat is and they have not investigated this person's identity. So again, on November 10th, he wrote, "It feels like Tanya is stringing me along." Then on November 18th, about a week before Thanksgiving and the boy's disappearance, those messages kind of get a little darker. He wrote that things with Tanya had gone from good to bad to worse and said it will all end this weekend though. When asked what he meant, he said, "I'm giving up." He also wrote, "She wants to be alone, then she will be alone." At another point, he wrote, "I'm well on the path to hurting her so much anyway, might as well complete the job, LOL." The conversation really repeatedly references his fear of losing his family and custody of his children. He wrote that Tanya would not agree to shared custody, said he was empty without her, and said, "Tomorrow is my last day of pain." He said he had also given away all of his possessions. Then we heard from former FBI agent Christopher Hess, who analyzed Skelton's cell phone records from November 25th and 26th, which are really the 2 days in question. So Hess testifies that on Thanksgiving Day, Skelton's phone was near his Congress Street home for much of the day, but at one point it connected to towers roughly 19 miles away in the general area of Lazy River Campground. Now, this was in the very early morning hours of November 26th. So Hess says that this does not prove that Skelton was physically at that campground. He just used it as a point of reference. There was also a period with no phone activity for about 2 hours, meaning that investigators can't account for the device at that time. The phone later connected again near the Skelton home at 6:46 a.m., and the judge specifically asked Hess about whether the phone had moved a considerable distance from the house. He said yes, and that the phone would not have connected to those distant towers if it had remained at the Congress Street home there in Morenci. The judge also heard from Skelton's first wife, Michelle Lamphere. She testified about their marriage, specifically his drinking problems and their custody battle over their daughter, Katie. She said after she gained custody, Skelton was very upset and repeatedly said he would never be a part-time father. One thing that I have to say that a lot of us raised our eyebrows at was this woman testified that she had met a man online when Katie was 6 or 7 years old and decided to move to Boston with him, and decided that Katie probably wouldn't want to move to Boston and would want to be with family instead. So that's when she left her with John. Moving on. Michelle also testified that John's relationship with Katie eventually became less frequent, with calls sometimes only coming once every few months. Katie was eventually adopted, her choice, by Michelle's husband. And today was just kind of a mixed bag, little bit of digital evidence, the revelation on cross-examination that we may not see any physical evidence, and just a couple little nuggets from the ex-wife about possibly a motive, which would be that John said he never wanted to be a part-time father.